welcome back to Bunters Yard. Today we are working on this Bachmann Grain Hopper, one of the Worthington branded hoppers, and this is a rake of 5 that we're doing for Waldle Road, for Ollie over there, Waldle Road, and this is just one of the 5. So the others will be in a similar sort of vein, but we're trying to mix them up a little bit, make them a little bit different as we go. So these don't slide, so that's saves us a job, and the lid doesn't seem to come off easily anyway, so I'm not going to try it. So now with these hoppers, there's underneath that slopey bit, it's hard to paint inside there, so it's easy to take this apart. So we're just going to pop these pop the couplings off, just pop them out of the way for a minute. We need them back obviously in a while. And we'll take the wheels off because we're going to paint them separately. And then we'll undo the 2 little screws that hold the body to the chassis, and then we'll just separate those. There's a little weight inside this, you'll see, attached to the bottom of the body there. In this one, it's actually glued in. They sometimes fall out. So we're going to make a few little sort of repair marks on this, and just going to mask it. Now I'm only using painter's tape. This is a 3M masking tape. So you do get maybe not the finest line, but for what we're doing, really doesn't matter. Because there'll be weathering on top of it, so if the line isn't exactly flat, straight, if there's a little bit of seepage, it's really not going to matter that much. If we're doing like a respray where we've got sort of different colours, then we'll probably use a different tape. But this will do for this. It's just easier to use because it's paper; it tears easily. And we can sort of mould it around those ribs. So on the left, where you can see the Worthington 3 number, we're going to paint that in a black. So we're just going to paint over that completely on this one. We're not doing it on the rest, just on this one, just so we can sort of I won't say renumber, wouldn't be as give it that much credit. We're just going to put some chalk markings over the top of that, and those 2 in the middle, we're going to paint those in grey to look like a repair. You can use like a different colour of the body if you choose, or red primer, or any colour you want really, but we're just going to do it in a grey primer to make it look like it's been repaired and not repainted. Do the same on both sides, and there we are. There's our primer. I've used car primer on this one, just like Halford's primer. It's just quick, dries really quickly, and it's the colour we're after. It's primer at the end of the day. So we're just going to patch that over, just going to mask that, and then we'll blow this in with a little bit of black, and this will be our black square. So just mask the other bit, the other grey bit that we're painted. We don't obviously want to overspray on that. And then on the other side, we don't need to do that because the patch is not next to it. So just going to paint that in, not too much on there. So I won't make it too heavy and runny. And then once that's dry, we can peel this away. Now you can see on that grey primer patch, there's been a little bit of run and seepage, and I sort of I'm not saying I was expecting it, but yeah, I'm okay with it being there. We can get rid of that. The paint is quite soft, but lots of it's going to be obliterated by sort of weathering and mud and grime that we're going to apply in a bit. Right, so our first colour that we're going to put on is this earth colour, and just make sure that when you use any of these dropper bottles that the dried paint or the old paint on the top is cleared away. Otherwise you will end up getting bungs in your airbrush, and it'll start blocking it up. Now this is a Vallejo Color Air, a Model Air I should say, so it doesn't need any thinning necessarily from the bottle. We can use it straight away. So what we're going to do is just apply it to these bits where kind of I want the mud and the grime to have accumulated, and literally I'm just going to wipe it off with a tissue. You can use a brush or a cotton bud if you choose. Cotton bud seem to I think just gives a sharper line, which kind of we don't want. I don't think we want that. We just need this smear sort of effect. So I think that works out quite well. So just going to do a small part at a time. Otherwise you run the risk of it drying before you actually get to it and sort of starting to wipe it off. So we'll go around the whole of the model doing that. Now if there's not enough, you can always add a bit more to it if it's too much, because the paint's still fresh. It'll come off with a little bit of water or even thinners if you need to. Now on the ends, they tend to get a little bit heavier with the grime, so we'll do it completely top to bottom and maybe leave a little bit more on than we normally would. Now on the roof, we've turned the air pressure down a little bit. This is probably about 10 psi, and just finally just going to go around these runners and some of the edges underneath the openings, the slidey doors things at the top, and again just wipe it back a little bit with a tissue. Now if it looks a bit harsh, we can always add a little bit more in, but again there's going to be some more weathering, and the colours we're going to apply a little bit later on. So we'll do the same with the other runner. Just make sure you do this from both sides, because you will get that sort of bit of masking. You can see where a bit of detail, the raised detail, has sort of masks the roof from getting the paint on. So we just need to make sure we go around that. Now we don't want too much on there. Once we've done that, we'll add a couple of little streaky runs. And apologies for my head getting in the way there. I'll make note of that. Hopefully it won't happen again in the next video. And just really light runs from those supports of the walkway. Okay, our next colour we are going to use is chocolate brown. Now this is model colour, so model colour needs to be mixed down with thinners. So we just used a 50-50, a couple of drops of paints to a couple of drops of thinners. We don't need a lot. We just want to do this underside. My thoughts are this is where all the dirt and grime is going to collect, and it's never going to be cleaned away. It's in the shadows, so it needs to be quite dark under there. So I've used a different colour to the sort of general grime on the side, and we're going to extend this around in a little bit as well. But just for now, while the body is apart, we'll just paint that sort of slopey bit of the hopper. Just make sure that you do it from all angles so that you get those fins or supports or whatever they are. You get the sides of those as well. It's just easy doing it when it's apart rather than when it's fitted together. So we're doing the same on the bottom part here, paying sort of attention to the ends there because they'll be visible. And then while we've got that colour in, we'll paint the wheels as well. And mustn't forget the couplings either. So cleaning my airbrush during the course of the day, especially if I'm going from one colour, one similar colour to another, I'll just use just plain water, and sort of with the pipette there, we'll just take out as much as we can. Use some more water, and we're just sort of flushing it through a couple of times. We'll do that 3 or 4 times maybe, till it becomes clear like that, almost clear, and then we'll just leave a little bit in there. And on a tissue, I'll turn the pressure up a little bit maybe, and then just blast the water out. And you can see it's gone from paint to clear water now, and I'll just do that until all the water's gone. And that's good enough for like a colour change between one another. If I'm going from black to white, then I may be a bit more thorough. End of the day, I'll just use airbrush cleaner to make sure it's properly clean. So back to our hopper. Just adding a bit of adding some grey into that brown, just to make it a little bit darker, and just give it more shadow and variation underneath. And we'll just really concentrate in the middle there. We're not doing the whole of it, so in the darkest part where it's going to be in shadow. And also just a little bit on the chassis as well. This particular area is the bit that's going to be showing underneath the slope of the hopper. And you can see on there's a little sort of dimple little key that makes sure the chassis only fits on one way. It looks the same both ways around. I'm not sure why that keyway's there, but just make sure when you fit that. Now for tiny screws, I find that if I put a dab of grease on the end of the screwdriver, it will hold the screw. Or you could get a magnetic screwdriver if that's what you chose. Then we'll put our chocolate brown back into our airbrush, and we're just going to do these sort of lower areas where lots of the track grime is going to be splashed up. And we'll apply that to the chassis as well, and this kind of blends the two parts in the body with the chassis and makes them look like they belong together again, hopefully. And just make sure that you hit this from all sides, because there's a bit of detail on the chassis, on the axle boxes, and it's so easy to leave one side completely unpainted. So just very lightly, just running the tissue down, just take some of the sort of, top surface off the paint off the chassis, and then those markings, the weight markings and so on, we just wipe them back. They're normally kept clean. So we'll continue around with the chocolate brown. We'll do the undersides and the coupling ends and the buffer bars and so on. I'm just going to make this a bit heavier here. It's already had the lighter brown, but we're just going to make it a bit darker. And just be careful with that ladder. You can see where the ladder has masked the paint from the body. So because we're going to sort of smear it back, it doesn't really matter, but just make sure there's a little bit on there. But it won't show in a minute. Now these run marks are going to be fairly sort of random at the end. They're not going to be the same on every wagon or the same on both ends. So you can use different ways of doing it with your a tissue or a damp brush or whatever you choose. So for our next part, we've turned the airbrush down, the pressure down to, you can see 10 psi there, and this allows us to do these narrow faint lines. If we get fairly close and we're fairly light on the trigger, we can just paint in around these areas, similar to at the beginning with the earth brown, but now we're using a grey brown sort of grease colour that I've sort of concocted. And I'm just going to paint around these runners. Now the theory is these runners will be lubricated with some grease, which will obviously go a bit off and get dirty in the course of its life, and it will make these marks hopefully, and there'll be some runs and smears from the weather and all the other elements and so on. And we'll do the same on both sides. Now again, don't forget just to make sure you do it from both sides of the model, because the runner will mask the paint from going on the roof on the other side of the runner. So just need to spin it around, and then we'll do from that side as well. And then we just use the brush just to soften this off. These brushes, by the way, are from Elegoo. So if you do any resin printing and you get you get resin from Elegoo, you get one of these brushes each time you get a bottle of resin. So I've got hundreds of these brushes, quite useful. We're going to paint in a couple of runs, very light runs at the ends of these runners in our sort of greasy grey brown colour, and then just maybe a little bit there as well. Maybe not all of them, just a couple, just to make it look a little bit more random. So on this one, we're going to do a thing called dry brushing. Now, probably most modelers know what this is, but in case you don't, this is what we're going to do. So we're going to use this aluminium coloured paint. You can use any colour you choose, obviously, that would fit in. So I'm going to use silver for like an exposed metal kind of look. And then with your brush, put a little bit on the brush and then wipe it off as much as you can. You can see there's still quite a bit on there, but just enough to sort of hit the raised detail. So we're going fairly lightly with the brush. It doesn't look like it there, but it is quite a light sort of technique. And you can see the edges just start to erase. You know, they're highlighted, and things like the bolts and the rivets, the heads of those, if you do it correctly, they'll become silver as well, and they'll become more obvious. And I like that sort of effect on the buffers as well. They remain pretty much black, but they get that little silver edge to it. Now a lot of this silver is going to be obscured by weathering powders anyway in a moment, so it's not going to be quite as obvious as it looks there. And you can use a contrasting rust colour if you choose, so you could use an orange or a lighter brown. It's just really to highlight those elements, those raised details, because there's lots of detail on these models, and it's when it's just plain black, you really don't see a lot of what's there. So the wheels I have already lacquered before I put them back on, because they just need a bit more protection. And then we'll put the NEM couplings back in the correct place. And then not much more to do now. The next stage would be to add our weathering powders. Now this is my palette that I use, and here we have the so these 4 rust colours are from Vallejo, and we're going to use the darker of the brown on those axle boxes. And and a little bit on the chassis just to mess it up just a little bit and sort of blend it in with the top of the wagon. And then we'll use a lighter of the rust just to give some little sort of highlight details to the axle boxes again. And the same on the other side. Now I'm using a small brush for our weathering here, and just putting a tiny bit on. It's I've said this lots of times before, but it's difficult to get weathering powder off, especially Vallejo. The particular one from Vallejo, and the Humbrol one of the Humbrol's one they use. If you put too much on, they're very difficult to clean off. So yeah, just little and often. Now on the roof, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're using this green, which is chrome oxide from Humbrol, and it's very bright, so be careful. So I always mix this in with the dark earth weathering powder from Humbrol as well, just a little bit here, and this gives kind of this green algae type effect. You can see it just sort of biting in there. It probably looks more green in the video than it does in real life. So it's normally not quite as vivid as that, but just be really careful with the green, because it's very bright. Once it's on, it's gonna stay, and it's gonna look very green. But it's nice to mix into to the weathering, the Humbrol dark earth weathering powder, and just gives a nice that sort of algae, mossy effect on the roof there. Now on these walkways, we'll just add a little bit of rust in, a little bit of the weathering powder, just to break up the monotony of the plain grey all the way along. And then rather than painting in any sort of rust patches, I've chosen to use just a weathering powder, just making it heavier on one or two of the panels. Just on this one, I think, on this particular wagon. Just using a couple of different colours of rust powder until we're happy with the effect. And then finally a little bit on the buffers there. So using the dark brown first, and then we'll just go to a lighter one just to highlight that a little bit. Now we want to renumber this. I say it's a bit of a lavish claim. We're just going to write a number on, whatever that might be, 46, and then some indeterminate writing there. It can be whatever it wants to be. We've added some other writing, some other markings around as well. Just some sort of random bits here and there. And then Vallejo varnish, this matte varnish, and that seals everything in, so it's easier to handle, and we're not going to run the risk of the weathering powders coming off. And that's it, it's done. So thanks for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed this one, and we'll see you next time at Bunters Yard.